All right, this is the fourth episode of the Wolverine Whisper, and we're back after a little bit of a break. Just a lot of busy things going on in each one of our lives, but we're happy to be back with you. I'm Seth Berry as always, and along with me is Ryan Krause and Noah Poser. A lot has happened, in the world of Michigan and Michigan sports with the football and basketball programs. With basketball finally losing, a game to Wisconsin and them dropping back in the rankings, to number 5 after having a chance at the number 1 overall ranking, but still in a good position to obviously win the Big Ten and make a deep run in March. And then, Michigan, the way they ended the season in football, obviously disappointing, with the loss to Ohio State and then the setback in the bowl game. But, people are kind of going in the offseason wondering if Jim Harbaugh would change and, with the offense and just the grumbles out of Ann Arbor about the direction of the program. And then, the big news about Josh Gattis, the hire, who's going to be the offensive coordinator for Michigan, next season, was a big announcement for the program because Harbaugh basically said he's giving the keys to Gattis and that he's going to run the whole Michigan offense. And people are excited about that because obviously Michigan, he was a wide receiver coach at Alabama, and the co-offensive coordinator as well. But he obviously worked really well with the receivers over at Alabama, and really opened things up for their offense, and is a young, innovative mind who should be able to, kind of take this Michigan offense to new heights, hopefully. So, it's kind of might be one of those, okay, let's hold on and, we'll believe it when we see it type of things, which is fair because I think Harbaugh does have that stubbornness to him, but it should be interesting to see how he opens up that offense, how he utilizes weapons like Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Tariq Black, to make this Michigan offense explosive and hopefully one of the top offenses in the country. So what was your guys' reaction to, just the hire of Gaddis and, are you kind of your excitement level about that?
I'm really excited about the Gattis hire. I was definitely one of the skeptics going into the offseason of how Jim Harbaugh was going to go about fixing the offense. Not that it was bad last season, but it was obviously very conservative and did not take full advantage of the weapons that were in place, like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Tariq Black, and Josh Gattis is still getting space. Should do really well wide outs at Michigan, on top of the recruits coming in, such as Colin Johnson and Giles Jackson. And I think getting the ball out in space more, airing it out a little bit more, moving away from the classic 2 tight end sets, fullback offense, I think it would be really a good move towards the modern day way of winning college football, which is you need to score points. Unlike in the past where defense wins championships, nowadays it's defense may win championships, but you have to have a top-notch offense to get to that point.
Yeah, I think the Alabama had a really good receiving team last year. I mean, you look at some of the stats. Jerry Jeudy had 68 catches for over 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns, and Henry Ruggs was just a little behind with 46 catches and 741 yards, but 11 scores. So these guys are getting in the end zone. They're getting the ball, and they're able to make plays, and that's definitely the strength of Michigan's offense is the receivers. We don't know what's going to come of the running backs next year. You got Chris Evans coming back, and Christian Turner looked promising in the Peach Bowl audition that he had, but you never know. So I think that you gotta take advantage of these playmakers that they have at receiver, and the hashtag has been speed and space. So we'll see if he can capitalize on that and take Michigan's offense to new heights.
Yeah, I think you guys hit on it. I mean, the biggest thing with Gattis was obviously his success with the wide receiving core at Alabama. I was looking at the stats, comparing Michigan's wide receivers and Alabama's wide receivers. I think Alabama had like 6 guys go over 600 yards this season, and Michigan just had 2. So, I mean, that's a pretty big difference in terms of just getting the ball, to people and making big plays. And like you said, Noah, with the recruiting class coming in, the receiving core is just going to be, it's going to be even deeper and just expands. So it could really become, the most dangerous weapon in Michigan's offense if they use that part of their offense right. So and which will only help the running game if you have people stretching the defense, and having to worry about the vertical threat will only help guys like like Christian Turner and Chris Evans, and maybe if the freshman Zach Charbonnet comes in and gets some carries, that's yet to be determined. But yeah, I think it's exciting to have Gattis kind of lead the offense. And if Harbaugh just, I heard some people kind of talking about this, and I agreed with this kind of statement that Harbaugh should just be the CEO, of the program, and just kind of oversee things and run things. And he can have obviously his say in the game plan, and situationally in the game, what to do, what play to call here and there. But I think he really needed an offensive coordinator to really help guide him and take this offense to the next level, and kind of throw some innovation in here, and throw some things at Harbaugh that Harbaugh needs to learn, because clearly in those last 2 games we saw that Michigan, their defense couldn't carry them. I mean, defense was phenomenal all year up until those games, but as soon as you have to get into a shootout, against teams with speed and who can play in space, and what are you going to do? So I think that hire was was strictly made for that reason. And who knows, the Ohio State and the Florida losses could only mean good thing. It could be the best thing that happened in Michigan football, with just Harbaugh coming to that realization that he needs to change and adapt a little bit. So so hopefully he does, and hopefully Michigan's offense looks a whole lot different next year. And no matter who the quarterback is, McCaffrey or Patterson, if Gattis uses the weapons the right way, they should both have, either one of them should have success. Which is another interesting topic. I mean, about the quarterback situation with with Patterson obviously coming back, and then McCaffrey still being there, and Joe Milton obviously waiting in the wings as well. So just going into the offseason with the quarterback situation, where do you guys kind of see that playing out? I mean, I know it's super early, but with the quarterback depth, what do you guys who do you guys expect to be the starter? Going in, do you think McCaffrey has any chance of overtaking Patterson? Because a lot of people do want that. So
I'm probably, honestly, as big of a McCaffrey supporter as anyone out there. Love Dylan McCaffrey, think he has a great future at Michigan and in the pros. But even if Jim Harbaugh comes out and says it's an open competition, I really don't think there's any chance of McCaffrey starting next season. When you have all these weapons coming back and Patterson coming back with them, and the relationship that they've already built up over this past season, I don't think it really makes much sense for you to change that and put McCaffrey in there. Now, unless Shea Patterson has a horrific camp and horrific practices, then maybe that might start to be a thought that creeps in. But honestly, at this point, I don't think there's really any reason at all to why they should go to McCaffrey at this point.
Yeah, I think Shea Patterson's the guy. I have liked what I've seen from Dylan McCaffrey, and if Shea Patterson gets hurt, I think they're in a good position with McCaffrey at the backup position. But I don't know. The quarterback room is definitely cramped, so I can see one of those guys transferring. Whether it's Milton, I wouldn't want to see Milton transfer, or Peters, but it's just he's recruited a quarterback every year, so it makes it tough for some of these guys are going to want to play more than just 1 year as the starter if they even get that opportunity. So, but I think Shea Patterson should be looking at hopefully throwing for close to 3,000 yards and really making a name for himself next year. I don't think he's ever going to come close to winning the Heisman, but he can definitely be a very good quarterback at the college level next season and maybe help out his draft stock.
I also think it's interesting to point out that last season he didn't even really have that bad of a season. He didn't throw for many yards, but he still had a pretty good touchdown to interception ratio. He's still ranked top 5 in the country in passer rating, turned it over less than 10 times, or threw less than 10 interceptions on the season. So I don't think that he didn't live up to the hype that was expected. He wasn't really allowed to in that system, and that's one of the reasons why the Josh Gattis hire took place.
Oh yeah, the ability is definitely there. It's just you got to use it, and you got to realize that he has so much talent.
Yeah. I think I'm a big Patterson guy too. I was watching his film coming over from Ole Miss when he transferred. I was like, kind of he's gonna make Michigan a title contender just because Michigan. The argument was they're a quarterback away, a couple of seasons ago. And, he was very efficient this year, had a good year. But I know it was it's a limited sample size for McCaffrey. And, I know it's tough. But just watching some of his film, going back and watching some of his highlights from this year, he just seems a little more elusive than Patterson. Just maybe not in terms of scrambling and extending the play, but it seems like when he does his zone read, the play against Wisconsin when he ran off the edge for a touchdown, Wisconsin defensive end was right there to make a tackle, and McCaffrey just made one little cut inside, and then he was just gone, second level, and then no one can catch him. And I don't know, it seemed like Patterson would get tripped up in the backfield or kind of, I don't know, wasn't as shifty with his cuts like that. So I don't know. I think McCaffrey's ceiling is just off the charts. But his potential is crazy. But I wouldn't be complaining if Patterson won the job, obviously. But because he's a reliable quarterback, he can extend the play. He does a lot of things for the offense. But man, I don't know. I just it'd be a risky move. The safe move would be to go with Patterson. But I mean, if Harbaugh feels like it's McCaffrey's time and that he's developed enough and is ready to lead the team, then I wouldn't be upset with that either. I mean, Harbaugh has shown in San Francisco with going with Kaepernick and sitting Smith after he got hurt or whatever, he's made those gutsy calls before. So I don't know, but we'll see what happens with that. It'll be interesting as spring ball obviously approaches in the regular season, but long time away. So, but just all in all, the coaching changes. Sean Nua at defensive line coach after Madison left for Ohio State in a move that didn't sit well with Michigan players. Kind of, I don't know if a lot of players kind of felt like he turned their back on him, but whatever, he's making more money as a defensive coordinator over there at Ohio State. So all the power to him. But so they kind of went. Nua's I think 37 years old and Gattis is 35. So I was kind of making this point to you guys before the podcast that I just kind of like the way that they're getting these young guys in there and kind of being more innovative, and seems to be the way that college football is going now. Getting some of these new young guys in and kind of try to help out with new ideas, I guess. So really, anything else you guys want to hit on as far as Michigan football is concerned? Then we'll transition over to basketball.
I don't think that one thing I wanted to say is I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off in the recruiting because from everything from what I've heard is Gattis is a great recruiter and so is Nua. So, I mean, everybody praised Madison and Washington's ability to recruit, but I I just don't see a drop off there. I think they're still going to be able to recruit in Ohio and still be able to recruit out in California like Harbaugh's shown he can do. So I don't think there'll be much of a drop off there.
Honestly, for me, just so far this offseason has looked good, getting the new coaches in, showing that Harbaugh can indeed adapt, or at least it looks like he's trying to adapt. So at this point, just wait and see what happens, but so far it looks like they're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Ryan, with the recruiting, because Washington and Madison were really, known for being good recruiters, and but with these, with the new hires coming in, it seems like they will not lose much ground in that category, which is huge when you're, competing with obviously Ohio State to get recruits, and then the people like Alabama and Georgia and all them competing for titles. So it's obviously you have to recruit to stay try to stay on top, and hopefully Michigan will be able to do that. And then there's also a good point, Noah, about just Harbaugh adapting in general. I think it was big for him because a lot of people didn't think he would make any changes, which I kept saying, that's he's not like that. He's not that stubborn, and he's going to change. He's going to do something to, because he doesn't want to lose those big games, and and he knows he has some blame in that. So, and he really believe he wants to win and stay at Michigan until he wins, a title, or at least a Big Ten title, and get in the playoffs. So, really encouraging offseason so far, and some of the moves they made, and hopefully the direction will continue to trend upward as they approach the offseason, as the offseason keeps going and approach the regular season for next year. So we're kind of transitioning to basketball now. Also an exciting time for Michigan basketball. They're now 7-1 in Big Ten play. I've only dropped the one game this season to Wisconsin a couple of games ago, and then last night, which would be Tuesday night, Charles Matthews hits the big shot at the buzzer after Ignas Brazdeikis takes to the basket, gets blocked, and he kind of falls in the lap of Matthews. He takes a dribble, stays composed, and hits the floater at the buzzer as time expires. So, but a really, really choppy game. They shot 33% from the field. I think they 3 of 18 or 3 of 22 from 3. I have the box score up here. I just have it.
Yeah, 3 of 22 from 3.
3 of 22, yeah. So, I mean, they just did not shoot the basketball well at all. Minnesota did a good job of, they really switched everything. They guarded the perimeter well, kind of like Wisconsin was able to do against Michigan, and, just really quick. And Michigan, had trouble finding a matchup that they liked, but were still able to pull out the win. Kind of Minnesota came back at the end and, had a 10-0 run when Michigan looked like they had the game under control. They didn't score for over 4 minutes until the Matthews basket. So, but they pulled out the win, and they're still in pretty good shape. So, kind of what was your guys' assessment of the Minnesota game, and just kind of what you liked, what you didn't like, and all?
So the first thing is, as crazy as this may have sounded at the beginning of the season, John Teske for the past 2 games has been by far their best player over guys like Charles Matthews, Iggy Brazdeikis, and Jordan Poole, who have kind of struggled as of late. And, I mean, Iggy Brazdeikis, he had 18 points and 11 rebounds yesterday, but he shot 4 of 18 from the field and did most of his damage at the free throw line. So at least in terms of that, it's good to know that his confidence is not the reason that he's struggling, because he kept shooting and he kept driving towards the basket and kept getting to the line. which was a big help yesterday. But this game really, as it sounds, it came down to turnovers. Minnesota outplayed Michigan in every other aspect of the game. They shot better. They out-rebounded them. But they turned it over 16 times compared to Michigan, who turned the ball over just 6 times. So while Michigan wasn't able to consistently score the basketball, as you can see, shooting 34%, 13% from 3, 63% from the free throw line, them getting more possessions than Minnesota and making sure that Minnesota score even when they couldn't score was really the biggest thing for them in this game.
The big thing, even when Michigan wasn't scoring at the end of the game, there was a few times where they got 2 offensive rebounds in a row. Gattis, he just cut across pretty much the entire court to grab a rebound, and it just looked like Minnesota was just, okay, let's watch this. Somebody will grab it, and it wasn't good for them because it was Gattis, and I don't think it led to any points, but I like to see the hustle, even though they had such a stretch where they weren't playing very well and they weren't obviously scoring any baskets. But yeah, I think Teskey was 7 of 8 last night, so maybe he can get up to 12, 13 shots in a game like that where he's really got a hot hand, and maybe take away a few of the shots from some of the other guys. But a win is a win in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think Teskey has been obviously one of their most improved players, and he's these last few games he's really played well. And last night, you look at the box score, he was really the only player on Michigan's offense who scored the ball with any efficiency. I mean, like you mentioned, Noah Ignis was 4 of 18 and just wasn't able to get anything going. And I did like Gattis' mindset, though, like coming out of the getting shut out at Wisconsin, and he shot 4 of 18, but I liked him going to the basket. I liked him trying to create stuff because, I mean, where else was it going to come from last night from Michigan? I mean, there was really no other. They couldn't find an opening. They weren't good in the ball. The pick and roll wasn't really there. Minnesota's doing a good job of really covering anything. So they had to have someone just kind of put their head down and either go get fouled or go get a bucket inside. And Ignis was at least willing to do that. Obviously, you'd like him to be more efficient, but as a freshman, you're excited that he's not losing his confidence, at least, or it doesn't seem like it. So that was an encouraging thing to me. And but like obviously John Teskey, when he was off the floor, I mean, you could just tell, they were a little bit lost, and he's dangerous in the pick and pop. He's dangerous rolling, and obviously a good rim protector around the basket, with Minnesota just wanting to pound the ball inside all game because they're not a great shooting team. And, when Teskey was in there, he was able to affect some shots, that Minnesota was trying to take in the paint. So, and then obviously another takeaway I had was just the consistency on defense, just overall. I mean, you just obviously not scoring, struggling to score the ball, but they're always going to guard. And I don't think that is ever going to change with this team. And the obviously Beeline's team used to play a fair amount of zone, but it's not the case with this team because they can switch just about everything. They're athletic enough to guard the perimeter. It's hard to find a mismatch against them because they have guys who move their feet so well on defense. And, so yeah, Minnesota really couldn't get anything going either because of that. And, just one more thing was Austin Davis didn't play last night. I kind of like Livers coming in, and doing the small lineup. Johns, I think, played briefly 1 or 2 minutes, but I think Michigan, that smaller lineup can give teams problems. I don't know. They didn't expose, with Wisconsin or Minnesota with it, but I do think against certain teams that Livers playing the 5 and being able to stretch the floor and shoot the 3, and then maybe being able to play faster if Teskey is in foul trouble, could bode well for him down the stretch, depending on the matchup. So, but I think Davis is outmatched a lot of the time when he's on the floor, and that's been evident. So, yeah. Anything else you guys took away? Any other observations you guys had from the game?
Just one interesting thing from yesterday. Eli Brooks played 23 minutes yesterday, which, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty significantly by a pretty significant amount of season high. He didn't really contribute much, but just knowing that when he comes in, the offense can still run smoothly, that was pretty important for me to see personally.
Yeah, I think it was weird because I think, and I didn't even realize that about Brooks. I didn't even realize that he played that much. But now thinking back, he was on the court, quite a bit more than he usually was or is. And they played Simpson and Brooks together quite a bit, I think, as well. So, but it was interesting seeing just from the guard perspective, Simpson make a couple really not so good decisions late in that game, which is really unlike him. Usually he's pretty steady. I think they had a couple switches and he drove baseline instead of dumping it off to an open Teskey a couple times. He tried to take, a couple wild shots and tried to finish over the defense, which, led to a couple runouts for Minnesota to kind of let him get back in the game. So obviously he's got to be better late in the game with the decision making and, in those close games, because Michigan seems like they can get a 10 or 15 point lead in the second half on teams, but they stagnate on offense and let teams kind of crawl back into the game, and it really almost cost them last night. Probably fortunate to get out of there before, with a win, or at least before it went overtime. Thank goodness Matthews was able to come up with that shot. But yeah, it's just tough game, but they got a big one going to Indiana on Friday in Bloomington. Obviously a crazy environment there. Indiana's lost 5 in a row after starting 3-0 in conference, so they're really struggling right now. They lost to Northwestern on Tuesday night as well. Really struggled to guard Northwestern after, in the second half. So Northwestern was able to get a lot of open threes. So, what are your guys' expectations going into the Indiana game?
So for Indiana, they have Morgan and Romeo Langford, who are by far their best players and really have to carry maybe too much of the load for Indiana, because other than that, the depth isn't quite there yet, as RG Miller has gone about building this program. Personally, I think the biggest thing for this game is the fact that Indiana has lost 5 in a row, so they're going to be very desperate. They're still in the tournament picture, but their tournament chances are fading pretty quickly because they don't have that many signature wins outside of conference. For me, I think going into this game, I think that Indiana is going to win this game, because I think that their desperation and the fact that they're being at home and Michigan struggling as of late, I think really does not all mix well together for Michigan in this game, and I see them losing their second out of 3 games to Indiana this Saturday.
I'm looking forward to seeing if this is Brandon John's coming out party part 2. I mean, in the Indiana game, that's when he had 8 points, 8 rebounds, was played really well for over 10 minutes, and they really needed him in that game because they had a lot of foul trouble. But he came in and played really well, provided some energy, so it'll be interesting to see if he it was encouraging to see that he was the guy off the bench instead of Austin Davis. So I think that bodes well if they need more minutes from him again against Indiana. And yeah, they're just gonna have to limit Morgan. Last matchup he had 25 points, so if they can keep him at bay, I think they have a good chance at coming out with
Yeah. Yeah, I think Noah. Yeah, Indiana's a desperate team. Like you say, coming off the five losses in a row. So they'll be desperate coming into that game and looking for a win. And always a tough environment to play in, like I mentioned. And Romeo Langford does pose problems. And Juwan Morgan inside had a good game against Michigan at Chrysler in the first meeting. So it's not going to be anything, that Michigan's going to go in there and just walk over Indiana. I mean, I know Nebraska was able to beat them pretty good in Bloomington, but that's one thing. Indiana's really struggling to score the ball right now as well. And I don't know. I think just studying the Northwestern, I didn't really study the film, but I watched the game. Want to stay studying the film to make myself sound a little smarter, but just watching that game, they struggled. Northwestern set some screens off the ball, and Indiana was not communicating on anything, and it really allowed them, to get wide open threes. So, if Michigan can move the ball, set screens, and get people open, and knock those shots down early, then, I think they can, hopefully take the crowd out of the game and, have a good chance to win on the road. I don't think they're gonna. I'm picking them, but I don't think it's gonna be like. I'm gonna say Michigan wins by like 3 or 4 points. Like it's gonna be down to the wire, all the way to the end, type of game. But I do think the Friday night's kind of weird, and it being a 6:30 start. Like hopefully you get some later arrivers, and the crowd doesn't get into the game right away. But they always in Indiana, they always find a way to get the crowd in. So huge basketball state, obviously, but no, it'll be fun. It'll be a good test for Michigan, and I think if they could get a win, it'll give them some confidence, going forward, and just being able to win in a hostile environment. Obviously, they did it early in the year against Villanova. Villanova's actually playing really well now. They're probably going to enter the top 15 after they beat Butler on Tuesday night, assuming they win this weekend at home against Seton Hall. But yeah, so yeah, I think like I said, if Michigan can go in there and get a win, it'll bode well for the confidence, and they really do need to keep up, in terms of the Big Ten regular season standings with Michigan State, because Michigan State is playing, they're playing out of their minds right now. I mean, they're playing really good basketball. They look like they could be, if not the best, definitely, obviously top 2 in the Big Ten, might be the best team in the Big Ten right now. They're playing it like it. Whether or not they can sustain that, we'll see with road games at Iowa and Purdue this week. But if they continue that play, Michigan they're going to have to keep up. So yeah. So in terms of that, they're just going to have to keep winning and get a couple big road wins before they have a couple of games with Michigan State down the road to where hopefully they can leapfrog them. But yeah, anything else you guys are kind of looking forward to? To Friday's game and just the whole Big Ten picture in general, or anything Michigan basketball, really?
I think for Michigan to win this game on Friday, I think that the real Charles Matthews has to show a full game, not just a game-winning basket late in the game. I think the entire time he's on the court, may that be 25, 30, 35 minutes, I think he needs to play how he played at the beginning of the season and how he played for the majority of last season. If he can be that aggressive guy getting to the basket and just playing all out on defense, I think that is the key for Michigan being the team that they were, that started undefeated, not the guy who came out against Wisconsin and went 2 for 5 in last game against Minnesota, where he went 3 for 8. I think he needs to be like last game against Minnesota. Iggy was 4 for 18, but he was aggressive and he kept going to the basket and he didn't lose confidence. To me, it just looks like Matthews is sort of lacking confidence at this point. I think that if he can get back to his aggressive self, I think that they have a much better chance of beating Indiana than they would if he plays how he's played the last 2 games.
Ryan?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think that they need to play. Obviously, being on the road, you got to play, be aggressive, come out and really try and punch them in the mouth and get the home crowd out of it. If they can do that, I think they got a good shot. And one thing I know, Noah, you were just talking about Charles Matthews. I feel like he fades away from the basket way too much. Like he's got the body to be able to go up strong to the hoop, and even just I don't know. I feel like he fades way too much on most of his shots. I see him, get to the basket, and then he'll do a spin move, and before you know it, he's fading when he's shooting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of times, like, he'll go to the basket, and sometimes he'll have his man beat or have him on the side, and then he'll do that jump stop, and then that reverse pivot and, like, fade, and it's like, okay, that's fine for when the defender is, like, on you or in front of you, and then you can kind of create the separation. But if you have him beat already, go all the way to the hole and finish through the contact, I mean, it seems like he has that set move in his mind every time he goes to the basket. And I think he's kind of overthinking the game right now. That mid-range is a good shot for him. And he can, he has the athleticism to be able to elevate and hit that over people. But, yeah, and I think against Minnesota, they ran a play for him early on. I think the first possession of the game, kind of like an overcut, going to the basket, and it was wide open, and he kind of just dropped and fumbled the ball. So, I mean, yeah, no, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's a confidence issue with him right now, it seems like. And, hopefully that shot going in, at the end will kind of let him breathe and relax a little bit, because, when you make a shot like that, obviously you get the spotlight, you get the attention, and, you feel good about yourself. So, yeah, hopefully he can show up and, really, really carry Michigan, and, because he's an important part of the offense. And when he can get going, if he can get going, it's going to help Michigan out a lot. So,
and the cold shooting isn't going to last either. I mean, against Wisconsin, they didn't shoot the ball well. Against Minnesota, they didn't shoot well. So, who knows? It could be the lid comes off the basket, as they say, and they, they just score a lot of points and are able to, hit 50% from 3, and that'll help them a lot. Help them get the win on Friday.
Yeah, I think you can I know this team is inconsistent on offense, which is kind of just who they are, because it isn't one of John Beilein's, not even one of his, top 3 best shooting teams. It might be one of his worst shooting teams statistically. But, I think just with the way they run their offense and the floor spacing, and, if they do it right, and if they're, moving the ball, I mean, you can only keep a John Beilein offense down, for so long. I mean, they're just bound to break out. I mean, you saw early in the season what they did to North Carolina early, and against, Villanova and Indiana, Northwestern at home. When they're rolling, they can be dangerous in that side of the ball. So, hopefully you just hope it's one of those games where they come out and they're hot and they can get a lead and take the crowd out of the game and be able to hold it. So, but we'll see. It's tough going on the road in the Big Ten and winning, especially when the conference is so deep this year. So, it's just kind of a wait and see kind of thing. And, can only hope guys show up. And one other thing was Jordan Poole. When he's not going, it seems like Michigan's offense really, really stagnates. When he's hot and kind of he can be one of the playmakers or the primary playmakers for Michigan. And when he doesn't show up, that it really kind of, Michigan's kind of looking at each other on offense saying, okay, who are we going to go to? So I think he's important as well, in terms of, just being able to establish a flow within the offense. So, yeah, so tune in at 6:30 on Fox Sports 1. I think it is, for Michigan, Indiana. See if they can come out with a win and stay in the top 5 and stay in the Big Ten title race. Keep pace with Michigan State.